Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lights Too Bright podcast. We're now in double digits in terms of episodes. And today I'm really lucky, and you're going to be really fortunate to hear from a friend, a colleague who I've known for about 10 years. We met whilst I was doing a bit of extra education, a bit of learning on sports vision. And my guest today has a great history in sports vision. So she came to teach us and tell us how to do it. And so, with the greatest respect and thank you in advance, I'd like to say hello to Michelle Beach. Hi, Michelle.
You.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And it's really interesting, and we've done this. I mean, we've been talking for about 10 minutes, and I sometimes think, do I record that off the bat first? And then lead into the pod. But then I'm thinking back to some of the conversations I've had with some people, and I thought actually maybe not.
I can imagine.
So some of it's not really relevant to the profession, and people don't need to know what I had for lunch, and things like that. But I know a couple of other people do it. So
I know.
we're at episode 13,
Gosh,
and
unlucky for me.
it's all superstition. And you, like I said, I've known you for about a decade now. You have a beautiful practice, which I was fortunate enough to visit last week. And you have, you have a well-respected name within the profession. You have an award-winning practice. So just for the audience who don't know you, what do you do now? What is your current role?
Well, most of my days and hours seem to be spent at Part Vision in Nottingham. It's a boutique. It's small but beautiful practice in Nottingham, where obviously it's an independent practice. And I'd like to think we specialise in sports vision, school vision, dry eye, and actually style. We are a boutique practice. We go all over the world looking for frames. So that's where I spend most of my days. But as you know, I'm also a KOL for Menacon and Alcon and Therma Eye. So if I'm not in practice, I'm often at conferences or Silmo next week, which is really exciting. And so, yes, we meet abroad care as much as we meet in this country. To say, it's such a social profession, this. My Optom family, as I call them, we're always meeting, whether it's London, abroad, wherever we are. So that's where I am now.
Fantastic. So this is where you are now. And really, this pod is about professional development, how you got to where you are. So if we go back right to the beginning, kind of, where did you grow up? How did you end up in Nottingham? And probably a leading question is, did you always want to be an optometrist?
Absolutely not. I was born in Hampshire, but actually, when I think of growing up, that was Norfolk. So my father got moved he worked for the ministry and got moved to Suffolk. And so I grew up on the Norfolk-Suffolk border in probably what was quite an idyllic childhood. So I'm a middle one of three, and I spent most of my childhood jumping on hay bales, straw bales, in fields, went to a lovely country school, and probably had quite an idyllic childhood, really. I had a horse, a dog, I had rabbits. I was a real country girl, very sporty. And no, nobody wore glasses. Nobody in my family is an optometrist. And I didn't wear glasses until we were all testing each other at Cardiff University. So no, I loved the sciences, thought about doing medicine actually, and went to Cambridge when I was about 17 on Be a Doctor Day that they were running at Addenbrooke's Hospital. And I remember going and thinking, everybody here is really passionate about medicine. And I love that, but I don't feel that real calling. So then I went back into Norwich City College's library because there was no online then, because that's how old I am. And I was trying to think of something that was quite sciencey to do with medicine, but wasn't medicine. And I looked at physiotherapy, I looked at dentistry, I looked at all sorts of things like that, and actually dropped a prospectus on the floor. And when I picked it up, there was a little boy sitting there with a trial frame on, and I thought, "What's that?" And that is how I became an optician. I started reading about it and thought, "Wow, this is kind of medical, and it's with people." And I went and sat. I think Stuart Amy Opticians in Norwich, which is still there, and I went and sat in with the original owner, because it's probably about 35 years ago now. And I sat with him, spent a few days with him, and then went to the eye department at the hospital as well. And that was it. Applied to Cardiff. But actually, probably before then, I wanted to be a famous basketball player, because I was sports mad. And actually, if I hadn't had an injury, I probably would have failed my A levels because I was going around the country playing basketball. So yeah, if I hadn't smashed my knee up, I'd probably be a bit of a not playing any more basketball player. Is probably where I would have been.
But I mean, that for me, because I like sport, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I've real fascination and a huge, huge kind of, I really look up to people who are very good at sport, because I understand the talent aspect of it, which you've got talent or you haven't got talent. I get that. But the sheer determination of people who are
Yeah.
elite sports people just absolutely fascinates me. And I just find it amazing what they do. We look after the local rugby team, we look after the Saints. And for a
Mm.
big period of time, we used to have the academy players living opposite us. All right. So these guys are 17, 18, 18, 19, and they come out of school and they want to be pro players. And you see them, 6 days a week, 5 days a week, leave the house at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Okay. They might come home at 4 o'clock. But no Christmas breaks, no Easter breaks,
No,
all these things we take for granted, I think, weekends, and they literally just plug away, plug away. I've got,
absolutely. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally agree. And I
I've
think
got,
also it's not even those people. You've got to think that academy player didn't start at 18. That player probably started at 10. So it's
yeah,
not just them, it's the parents that have got up, and you look at rugby and football, but in Nottingham, we've got the ice arena. So I have lots of parents with the ice hockey. I mean, that's midnight on a Friday night. The
really,
then there's the ice hockey, the ice skating. And some of my patients are in the ice skating, especially the one where the group, they train at 5 o'clock on Sunday morning because they need the ice for other times. You've got my water polo players, they're going to Sheffield 3 nights a week from Nottingham. And
yeah.
these kids are 15, 16, 17. Their parents are driving them. And the ice hockey girls, they're 13 and they're up at 5 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And I've been told not to take my trainers off because I was bleeding through my trainers. I had new basketball boots, which you never ever buy before a serious game, and I was playing at Wembley on a European tournament, and you weren't supposed to buy new boots because you have to break them in. But mine had split, so I was playing on new boots. I was 16, 17. And I remember we'd played and we had a game to go. It was a knockout tournament. We were playing Ireland and there was blood coming through my boots because I had such bad blisters. And I remember Jenny was our coach and she yelled and said, "Beach, don't take those boots off. You'll never put them back on again." And,
And
we threw up
yeah,
on
yeah,
the side of the court. We were so exhausted. I'm passionate about sport. And I think when you watch the Olympics or you watch anything like this, the time and the energy and the psychology to get people there is amazing. And I
yeah,
think, you know, I personally think, we're in such a world now of, bloggers and Instagrammers and all this sort of thing, and all these influencers. And I think I'd love to see more athletes. That's who I would like my children to look up to and, our children's children to look up to rather than a lot of some of the fake stuff going on, because I
Yeah,
think that's tenacity and competition and, you know,
yeah, no, I agree, and we will move on from that because that's a whole different conversation. But you do see, I think
it is another
part,
conversation.
yeah, but part now of being a pro athlete is that social media aspect of it. You see,
Absolutely.
Cristiano Ronaldo, like whatever, hundreds of millions of followers and things like that, and Messi, hundreds of millions. So, but yeah, I, I could talk to you about sport like all day. I love all of
I
that.
know that's another hour.
Yeah. So, just we won't go into what happened. So, but when did basketball end for you?
I had a really bad smash at Wembley and I had to have my knee reconstructed, um, which then made the only thing I could do, because I was in plaster cast for about 6 months, was study. So I did get my A levels and I went to Cardiff, having delayed a year because I couldn't walk properly.
Yeah.
And I actually played basketball. I did go back and play for University of Wales, um, for a bit, but for me, I didn't think I ever played quite the same. My
Okay.
knee was a little bit, but it was great, and I still played. And actually, when I came up to Nottingham, I still played a bit then. But then, being a busy optometrist and everything, I couldn't devote the time, and I was getting a bit old then anyway. So
Yeah.
I stopped. But I still love the sport, and I'm still sporty, and my knees held that I can still get down a mountain. Some would say a little bit badly, but
I'm gonna
it
doesn't
is
matter how
what
you
it
get
is.
down. Doesn't matter how you get
No,
down.
well, I think my Norwegian optometry friends would argue on that one. But yes, I'm lucky enough that it's still going and it's fine. It's a bit arthritic now, but if I hadn't smashed my knee up, I wouldn't be an optometrist now. So, and I get to do sports in optometry. So yeah,
So,
so off I went to Cardiff.
I live vicariously through my patients who play sport
Yeah.
at elite level, like England, and we had a couple of guys who
Mhm.
went off to play with the Lions. I'm just sitting there going, yeah, I know him.
Yeah,
I'll look after him.
absolutely.
He's one of our,
Yeah.
he's one of ours. So you
Yeah.
went to Cardiff. You
Hmm.
did your optometry degree, and then where did you pre-reg?
So at the time, Dollar and Nixon was still going, and they came down and talked to us, and Boots was a huge pre-reg to do. And then we had a lecture on hospital optometry. And I think maybe that slightly missed doctor in me that kind of had this calling. Thought, I think, was it Janet Silver at the time from Moorfields came and talked to us about a hospital pre-reg. And I was just blown away and thought, this is where I want to be. And we had a lecture from Dr. Rubenstein, who ended up being Professor Martin Rubenstein. He was head of Nottingham Queen's Medical Centre. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he just absolutely, inspired me. So I went up and visited Queen's and I applied. And at the time, I remember thinking, oh, I'm not sure this is a good idea, because I think the pre-reg you were paid £8,000. That was your annual salary.
Yeah,
God, I sound really
yeah.
old, don't I? But yeah, and
That's
if I'd
about
gone and
right.
worked,
Yeah,
if
that
I'd
sounds
gone
about
and
right.
worked, if I'd gone and worked for Donald and Aitchison, I think I would have got about £16,000, which was huge. So yeah, I was lucky enough to be selected, and I came up and lived in the nurses' residence at Queen's Medical Centre, which is like a rabbit hutch, for a year. And the eye department was incredible. We mixed with all the junior doctors. There was teaching on Friday afternoons. And from there, I also, after my pre-reg, stayed on and did research with Professor Dewar on astigmatism after corneal graft surgery, and the low vision aid clinics, which I absolutely loved, and the children's clinics. And those days we used to go on the ward and do the biometry, and patients then were in hospital for a week for cataract surgery. And it was great. The eye department was amazing, and I learned so much, especially from the ophthalmologists. I think on and that was a really, really amazing. But while we were in the pre-reg year, we also had to go and work normal optometry, as they called it. So we also got sent out half a day a week to an independent and half a day a week to a multiple. Um, And the first time I started doing the multiples, having worked in the corneal graft clinics and low vision aid clinics, patients were coming in at 6'9" and 6'7.5". And I'll be like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. Off you go. And then the guy sort of had to say, they want new glasses. And I'd say, well, they can see great. He's like, no, they want to see 6'5", because they were just normal people.
Yeah,
And I think when you
yeah.
work at the hospital, especially in the graft clinics, getting somebody to 6'24" is a whole line better. Is the TV looks different and it's a gain, or getting someone to driving standard. Um, and I think I was very lucky in my training to have had a complete diverse, multiple, independent, and the hospital. And I absolutely love the hospital work, in a busy clinic, working alongside the ophthalmologist. I think was a real privilege. And I think as training goes, when you're then in private practice, not as much scares you, because you've kind of seen it. But I also think what happens to it. So I was lucky enough to go to theatres and see, macular peels, see cataract surgery, see the grafts being done. And I think, especially now when I talk to patients, I think it's really great that the hospital, the eye department's not a scary place. And this is somewhere. And I was really lucky to have that opportunity.
I, I, that sounds really, really fortunate. I mean, it's very similar. It's not very similar, but it kind of is a bit like my US experience, where
Yeah.
their system is slightly different, where you do 3 months in a setting, 3 months in a setting, 3 months in a
Yeah.
setting. But you get to see a diverse group of settings.
Mm,
You helps you kind of decide where you want to go career wise, because some people really thrive in a refractive practice where that's
yeah.
predominantly what they want to do. Some people think, I don't want to be in a room with no windows, but I've got other opportunities. And so I think you've kind of got that inadvertently just by virtue of the way your placement worked, where you got to do the hospital stuff and you
Yeah.
got to do regular optometry. And th- the point you made about not being scared, I think that is such a strong point, because once you've been in it and you
Mm,
see what ophthalmologist does to a cornea, and we're worrying about a slight tattoo after applanation tonometry, you're just like,
yeah.
eh, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Doing this and
Oh,
the
I
eye
know.
jigging all over the
Absolutely.
place, and you just
Yeah. I mean, I
really,
remember
really,
being very junior. I think I was 23 years old, and they put me in the low vision aid clinic, and a lady came in and she took her glasses off and half her face came away because she had fallen in a fire. Her toddler had gone to fall, and she'd pushed the toddler out of the way and fallen in the fire. And so her glasses, she had a false sort of all of
yeah,
this part of her
yeah, the whole,
face.
yeah.
That's it. And she had an artificial eye. And in those days, the guy that did the artificial eye came and hand painted them all. And he was such a talent. And then she popped her eye out, put it in her mouth to wash it out, and put it back in again. And I just remember thinking, don't pass that. Don't pass out, look really unprofessional. And, some of these stories I still think back to, and you really were thrown in the deep end sometimes. But the ophthalmologists were great and they were really happy to teach you. And I do think, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the multiple as well, because the multiple teaches you that it doesn't matter what happens, you need to be commercial, because at the end of the day, it teaches you a commercial side. The independent, I absolutely loved for the whole independence thing. I wanted Martin Rubinstein's job. I thought my career was going to be, I wanted to be head of the eye department at Queen's Medical Centre. I went to all the hospital conferences and I thought that's where I was going to go.
So
So,
what changed?
yeah. Well, I think what changed, first of all, I had twins, which, as anybody knows, once you have children, life changes. And I wasn't expecting twins, premature twins, and that certainly hit me for six. I also then started working just 2 days a week at the hospital and a bit more in private practice. And then I remember going to Optofair, as it was called then. Obviously, now it's 100%, and seeing a very glamorous side of optometry, because I don't know if people know me, I love sport, but I also
And you're
love
quite
fashion.
glamorous, I'd say.
I love fashion as well. And I love eyewear. And especially in the early 90s, Optofair, the champagne was flowing, the catwalk models, the fashion was there. And I was a little bit like a meerkat that had stuck its head out of a very medical optometry, NHS eye department. I was like, whoa, this is really fun over here. And I think there is an element of, the private independent sector, allows you to have that fashion side, maybe a bit more technology side. And then literally out the blue, I had a very good friend who was a GP and some other friends. And I literally had a call out the blue and said, we're setting up a health clinic in Nottingham, a private clinic in the old part of Nottingham, a bit like a house practice, which is going to have a GP in it, an esthetician, physiotherapist and everything. Would you be interested? And I'd never thought about owning my own practice at all. And I said no. Especially a friend of mine had a practice up the road, and I was like, oh, I can't go and open near him either. Um, and they said, okay. And literally a month later, they came back and said, well, if you don't do it, we're going to ask someone else. Come and see the building. This is what we've got planned for this all-in-one health clinic. And I went along and had a look, and I thought, well, with the kids, it might be quite easy. And I literally thought, I think I can do this. And I actually invited a friend along Stuart Ben from Performance Finance, which many people will know. He walked into this very small room, which was probably the size of my kitchen, one room with a joint reception. And he says, what are you thinking? And I said, well, I'm going to have half of it as a clinic and half of it with lovely glasses. And he looked at me, and as people know, Stuart doesn't pull any punches, and said, you must be out of your effing mind, and laughed his head off. But in my world, I thought this was a really great idea. And I got help with a designer, and I sat up on my own with no patients at all, and a shared clinic. And what I did was I worked locumed for 2 days a week, and I worked in private in my clinic 3 days a week. And I remember saying to my mum, well, if I can make £1,000 a week, I'll be happy. And that was in 2008. But I was supposed to open in 2008 in the March. But then I got a super bug and nearly died and spent 2 weeks in ITU in Queens. So the whole thing got shut up.
Yeah.
And I nearly lost my leg. And then I didn't actually open until the August, because weirdly, I think I got this weird thing, which was nasty, and luckily didn't die, because they pumped me full of antibiotics, which I'd never had in my whole life. Didn't have to have my leg cut off, and then came back. But
You don't do well with your legs, Michelle?
No. In the same leg, of which my father said to me at the time, well, it's a good job it's your gammy leg, Michelle. But yes, so it's still going, bless it. But yeah, that wasn't very nice either.
I didn't know
but
that.
I
That's
think honestly,
first time you've shared that.
Oh yeah. So I think because I was so healthy, in actual fact, at the same time I got it, 2 other people in the UK got it and died. And I can honestly say, I think some of my sports health resilience and the fact I'd never actually taken antibiotics. So when I needed it, they worked. And it was, yeah. So then I came out of that, and that was a bit of a knocker. And then 2008 was also the recession, if you remember. And so I obviously decided to set up practice on my own. And my mum was my first patient, and my dad was my second patient. And I'd set up this beautiful miniature sort of glasses studio. I think in my head, and this is where I'm sort of grateful to independence and multiples and hospital, I wanted Park Vision to be somewhere where you could have really stylish eye care, but really great frames, but really good eye care. I think the multiples taught you that you couldn't just sit in your ivory tower. They teach you about KPIs and things like this. And there were lots of things that I really disliked as being an optom in the multiples, the pressure and the time and, it one in, one out. And I wanted to go back to really old fashioned eye care. I wanted to have time, my time that I chose. And I wanted to do things, taking all the best bits from all the different places that I'd worked and kind of put it together that it was somewhere you could come, have great styling. So the fashion, the sport, the medical side of it, I wanted to kind of all put together in one practice. But my goodness, it was hard. Um, I think you set
But
up and you
it's
don't
paid
realize.
off. I mean, you've achieved that.
Wow,
The practice is
it was
beautiful. You
hard.
offer
I would never
fantastic
do it
services.
again.
Well, fingers crossed you don't have to do it again.
No, I do remember driving with a boot full of sunglasses to a women's lunch for a charity, trying to sort of sell sunglasses with huge bills owed to various companies, um, to try and spread the word about this basement opticians in one room that I'd set up, and thinking, please let someone, come. And I remember one fabulous lady said to me, would you come to my house and do a sunglass party? And I remember thinking, I've got a degree and I've worked really hard. And basically, she wants to be like, like a Tupperware party for sunglasses. But you know what? At that point, I would have done anything.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was hard. But here I am now. And I still love it. I think I'm really, really privileged. I love my Optom family. We talk about this a lot, that we see, lots of people at conferences. Um, I think in my room now, there's nothing in my clinic room that existed when I started, except for my ophthalmoscope. I mean, this, we were talking about this, the kit that we have now. I think the way optometry is so exciting, the dry eye technology, ortho-K, scleral lenses, AI technology coming through. And I think when you go to these conferences, not just optoms, but I have huge respect for all the people that have helped me. There was so much I didn't know as a very naive optometrist. And the people, the reps, the frame reps that have guided me, you know, people like Stuart Byrne, who's guided me financially, people like, in the contact lens industry that have helped me with sclerals, and some very, very, very talented and clever people in our industry. And I think I'm really privileged to know them.
And they're privileged to know you, Michelle, because you have a real passion for the profession. I know that there are days where if someone walked into me, they'd think, why does he keep doing what he does? Because I'm having
Yeah.
an absolute mare. But you always seem happy about it's like Brian. Brian is always happy about the profession,
Yeah.
and I'm like, Brian, dude, I can't deal with this today. I'm gonna go sit in my room and
Don't think
and
there's anybody that doesn't work with the general public that doesn't have a day like that. But I genuinely think I would like to think of my patients as extended family, and I have a laugh with them. Some of them now, it's when you have your patients, isn't it? I mean, I had a freaky moment where one of my patients that I've seen since she was 6 came in with car keys. And
yeah,
she drove herself to her appointment. I'm
yeah,
thinking, oh God, I'm really getting quite old now. But they're good. You follow patients. I think we wouldn't do what we did if we didn't love our patients and try and do the best. And sometimes it's a thankless task, and there are days where, yeah, you do want to walk out. But it's a great profession. I think we're lucky.
yeah. I agree. Because I know, so we've spoken about the practice, we've spoken how you got there, and it's a fantastic practice, and you now have multiple rooms, and from your one, you're now at 2 consulting rooms, looking at the third for the dry eye clinic, which is amazing. The other things you mentioned about the KOL work, just for our audience, I know how I got into KOL work, but I'm curious, how did you get into KOL work? Did they come to you? Did you go to them? Was it just
No,
kind of
I mean, I mean, I suppose I go to conferences and I'm quite open and chatty and friendly, but I think what people who know me really well, I have massive imposter syndrome. I think everyone is far cleverer than me, far better than me, far more. I mean, I sometimes look around the room. I did when we were doing the dry eye stuff in just before BCLA, and I look around the room and I think, I'm not really sure why I'm here. And I genuinely have imposter syndrome. So I would never approach anyone like that. I think they've come up to me. Perhaps they've seen me do a sport vision presentation. I've done some, I love working with Silmo. and I've done a lot on sort of sports vision and dry eye and children's vision. And I don't know, maybe I'm a bit gobby as well. And they come and ask me, and I'm always, I feel very privileged that I've been asked. And all the KOL work that I do is something that I'm passionate about. I wouldn't do it if I didn't believe in it. Um, the company, the technology. And I think it's quite a privilege being asked to test a lens. I get quite excited about new innovation. Um, and there's so much going on now. And I think if you've got a practice, you need to be current. I think you owe it to your patients to not sit in a room. I mean, you and I have often had a conversation, haven't we, where I thought this year's BCLA was incredible. To be there where they launched Juice 3. Some of the lectures were so inspiring, but I still sometimes look around that conference theatre and it's the same people. Where is everybody? And optometry is so exciting. There's so much to learn. I think I've learned more since I've done my degree on the conferences and diplomas and some of the courses that we've been on. And I don't know where they all are because
Yeah. No, I get
and
it.
you're always there and Brian is always there and we
Yeah.
know the people that are always there. And where is everybody? Because it's a really exciting place to be at the moment.
I think all of us, the thing we have in common is we have a passion for learning, and we all want to be cutting edge. We don't want to be left
Mm,
behind. If you get
absolutely.
something, Michelle, I'm going, you know, how on earth did Michelle get that? Shit, I need to get that. Right. So then and I'm sure
Ditto.
it's the same. So, we've got that FOMO, but we're also really social and
Yeah.
we want to meet our friends. And a lot
Yeah.
of the time, particularly, and you'll see this now that you're IP qualified, congratulations. You're going to see that a lot of the stuff in terms of treatments and things like that, you get a better idea just having a conversation with a friend that you've run into, as we were talking about the Roaccutane patient before we kicked off.
Yeah.
You pick up so much more from those
Mm.
kind of interactions than you necessarily do sitting, watching someone read slides to you. And those personal interactions also, for me, was very inspiring. So, I'm fortunate enough that I also have imposter syndrome, but I'm fortunate enough to hang around with some absolute legends of the profession. Having spent time in the States, I'm lucky enough to know some really, really impressive people in the US. And you kind of sit there and you think, these guys are so good at what they do and they're so willing to help and share that information. We're not a secretive profession. When I was talking to Hans, we're not that kind of profession where if someone works for one contact lens company, there's like a massive, you know, dislike of another contact lens company. Everyone gets together. Everyone has a good time. We share knowledge. And
Conversations are usually in the bar, aren't they? And it is such a funny profession. And I think anyone who's concerned about coming to some of these conferences or thinks they'll be on their own, they could come up to any one of us and we would, you know, under the wing, especially Brian. I mean, Brian just scoops up everybody, doesn't he? And we're not intimidating. I mean, I'm a massive sharer. I haven't got anything to hide. Um, and I also think that, especially if I think someone could do a better job, I'm quite happy to share. I mean, I'm quite happy for a patient to come and see you for 3D printed scleral lenses because I don't do it. I'm not good enough at it. Why would you not want your patient to have the best? Um, there's knowledge out there, and I think especially sometimes for me as owning part vision on my own, it can be a bit lonely. And so going to conferences, speaking not just in the UK, but Swiss friends, Norwegian friends, American friends, when we get together at these conferences, there's so much knowledge there. And it's a privilege to attend some of these.
fantastic. That actually is a really nice place to kind of stop. And I'm just going to quickly put in a quick plug because I'm chair of the membership committee for BCLA, which is a fantastic
Yeah.
organization. And as Michelle says, we have a great conference at least every couple of years. So please do join. Michelle, I promised you we would keep it to 35 minutes. We've just cracked 35 minutes. So I'm going to finish what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind. I mean, you've shared some great insight, but if you were to give an up and coming professional, and because you've had such a diverse career, and I include the sports career, I think of that as, that is career, that was potential career. What would you say to someone who's coming up, young, fresh faced? What would be your kind of like a key to success? It's a very broad question.
Do
Sorry.
you know what? I think the key to success is passion. And I think if you don't feel passionate or you feel that you're stuck in a refraction room, then get yourself to a conference because there's so much of optometry. You could be a hospital optometrist, you could just go work in the frame industry. There's so much out there to be excited about in optometry. But if you just sit in maybe that's what you want to do, sit in a refractory room. But if you don't feel passionate, get yourself out there to these conferences and see what's going on, because you can be as sporty as you want, as fashionable as you want, and as techno-minded as you want. I just think really is a fantastic career. And if you don't feel passionate about it, then get out there and find the bit of optometry that makes you passionate.
That's
And don't be afraid to come to these conferences because we are a friendly bunch.
That's amazing. Thank you. I think that is a great way to finish. I want to thank you again. I know you've just come back from holiday, so I appreciate it. And I appreciate the fact that you got so dressed up. I feel a little bit underdressed in my
I've got
hoodie.
my
Uh,
jeans on. You can't
I-
see my jeans.
this is the closest I'm getting to an ice cream in the next 3 months. So I thought I'd wear it. So I would like to thank you. Really appreciate you taking a time. And hopefully, I mean, we'll probably see each other soon somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it must be something coming up.
but there'll be something. There'll be. Brian was talking about going to NCC. That's early next year,
Mm.
and then there are a couple of events. But it's always great to see you. Are you? I don't know. Did you apply for Optician Awards this year?
No, but no, we haven't done, because I'm a little bit funny where unless I feel I deserve to win, I don't enter, and I don't feel
Okay.
that I think there are other people doing better things. But I have been involved with Optician Awards. I absolutely love the Optician Awards, and
Are you going?
I will probably be there because I think they're amazing, and it's one of my favorite nights in the industry. Yeah,
I will probably see you there then. Fingers crossed.
good.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you ever so much.
yeah. All right.